Hello, good morning. If you are sick and tired of the, I don't know, as a standard answer for every single thing you ask your teenager, you are in the right place. Today, I am going to go over with you why that tends to happen and some tools and tips that you can use to help equip your teen with some more complex emotional vocabulary and language outside of Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Thank you so much. All right. So here's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to start with a little explanation for you of the teenage brain, just so that you can build a little bit of context and somewhat compassion, okay? Compassion for what your teenager's going through. The teenage brain is actually going through a massive renovation. And I know I talk about this a lot in a lot of my videos, but I think it's really important for us as parents to understand because we forget. We forget as parents what it's like to be a teenager. And we forget too that I don't know. It's not just like an insulin, really disrespectful response. There is a part of this that is actually a physiological part of their current brain development that is getting you the really annoying and frustrating, I don't know. When their brain goes through puberty, their emotional brain, okay, the amygdala, is actually mostly fully formed by 11 or 12. That's the good news. The unfortunate part is that their executive function, the processing center, and all of the other necessary parts of the brain needed to put those very new and somewhat overwhelming complex thoughts and feelings into words and expression, that it's not formed yet. And so a lot of reason that you're getting that, is because they don't know. Like some of that is honest, okay? If you can just be with that for 1 second, some of their, is actually an honest place. They don't know. They understand your question. They understand what it is you're asking, but they truly don't know. Hi, thanks for joining me. They don't know. Hey, Yas. Hello, I'm going to wave to you. They don't know how to articulate what is the answer that you would like. They don't know how to put into words what you would appreciate to hear. Okay? So I say that as it's just kind of a caveat, however that's a big word, just to let you know that this isn't a defiant behavior per se, and to get you to stand into a bit of a place of compassion for the physiology of their brain and what is actually going on in their brain, okay? So now that I have said that, okay, I also understand that for teenagers, because I don't know is an actual truth in a lot of cases. That's the truth. They don't know. It's not that they don't understand you anymore. It's that their brain has all of the answers, but it's like jumbled code. It's like a whole bunch of jumbled code. And the part of their computer that unjumbles that and has it make sense isn't fully formed. And they can't turn on when it's working and when it's not, because scientifically they have proven that the blood flow to a teenage brain is completely random in different parts of their brain at different times, that the development is not linear. I don't know about if that was you, like if that was you and me, I'm pretty sure we would have gotten ourselves some help, because it's that frustrating. It is no different than when they were 2 years old and they were acting out because they didn't have language to tell you what they needed, that level of frustration, except that now it's not necessarily, although it is frustrating, teenagers tell me it's frustrating more for you now, because as parents, you look at your teenager and you're like, dude, like are you trying to be rude? Are you trying to frustrate the crap out of me with your I don't know response? Because it's not, we make up as parents that this teenager standing in front of us should, and as soon as you say should, I'm telling you, you're going down a bad path, should have the wherewithal, the IQ to be able to answer your question with something more than a 3-word answer. That's a story that if you have that as a parent, I'm going to ask you to check it. Check your story, because if you have a story that your teenager should, if the word should shows up, that's a red flag, know better, should be able to answer you, is smart enough to give you more than a 3-word answer, that story alone is going to get in your way of creating the relationship that you and your teenager want. So check your story. I get, like, if you have a super smart teenager and they excel at school or they excel at sports, or that it's easy to have that story. Of course you would. And if you're really highly intelligent too, then that would be even more frustrating. Of course you would have that story. And it's okay to have the story. I'm just asking you to check it, because sometimes that alone will build your frustration with their lack of control over their brain processing. And it will also have you begin to judge them negatively, which, remember how I said their emotion center is fully developed by about the age of 12? They pick up on that, the spidey sense of feeling judged, of feeling like, oh my gosh, you're so stupid. Yes, I did say it, because sometimes that's what you think as a parent. Like, why are you being so frustrating and shutting me out? And okay, so just check your story with your teenager. And I say all of that to help you come back to a place of compassion for the actual physiology of what is going on in their brain. All right, that out of the way now, let's move on and let's talk how we're going to actually change this situation. So the first thing is you model these things, these tools I'm going to give you, okay, these proven strategies. I've used this with families for 14 years. I've used this, I modeled this with my kids, and I'm telling you it works. If Yoss is still here, he'll put a little thing in the comments and tell you it works. Okay, here's what you can do for your teenager. Even if you're getting, okay, well, let's start with that. If you ask a basic question, something that seems like, come on, that is so simple, and you get, I don't know in response. Here's what I want you to remember. I don't know becomes a habit, becomes like a go-to response. When they don't know what to say, it's like it's the first thing I can pick off the shelf, right? Like, oh, I don't know. So even though it's partly true, it can also become a habit for them, okay? Just like anything you and I would do, you know, if someone says something that it's like a go-to response. So it can be habitual, so be patient with that. I also would love for you to say to them when you ask them something that seems so basic and they don't give you a response, to maybe say to them, I know you might not know, or maybe you do know, and it feels hard for you to find the words to express that. Do you understand how validating that is? It's so incredibly validating for your teenager to hear that it's okay not to know. Because the more that teenagers feel belittled or attacked, especially if you have that story that you're smart, like, what is your problem? You should be able to tell me this. Like, you're just, gosh, why are you choosing to be so frustrating, blah, blah, blah. The more that teenagers feel that, and it is a feeling, their spidey senses are up around this, I guarantee you are going to get more. I don't know. You'll just get more and more. I don't know. Because they are feeling backed into a corner. They're feeling attacked. And now saying anything feels too open for judgment or criticism, I'm not saying you're a bad parent. I'm saying, like, well, if you're like me, you're human. Like I did this too. Okay. There's no perfection going on over here. So if you're part of the imperfect parenting team, welcome to the tribe. It's easy to get into that judgment story. So let's stay out of the judgment story. When your teenager says, I don't know, I want you to say, that's okay. Just make it okay. Because when they feel not attacked, they feel validated, accepted, unconditionally loved, even if it's hard, that is when they're more likely to move past that habitual, partially true statement that is, I don't know. So if you were to say to them, yeah, you might not know. I get it. You know, it might, I know there's probably a lot going on in your mind and it might be difficult for you to put it out, you know, into words. If you do think about it and you come up with something, let me know. Or if it's something timely, it's like, okay, I know you might not know, or you might know, but you might not be able to get it out for me right now. We need to like get out the door to your sport, or we need to move on like right now. So I'm going to make a decision that I hope works for both of us, that we're going to do it this way. And I'm sorry if that doesn't work, but this kind of needs to be decided right now, that kind of thing. So that you're acknowledging that you might be making a decision that feels kind of controlling for them, but it's timely and you need to get it done in the process. And you're trying to also offer compassion that they might not be able to respond like right now in the moment. Okay. So there's that. All right. What you can model for them is this: I feel X about Y. Now, this isn't just in the moment when you're feeling frustrated, although it's an amazing thing to model in the moment, okay? So when you can model, I feel X about Y in your life, just in general. I used to say to my boys, I would say, when they cleaned up, let's say they tidied up their toys, like when they were little, I would say, I feel really respected that you chose to clean up your space, or you cleaned up your toys that went as I asked you to. Or if they, they wanted to help, or I feel really happy that you helped me with this, or something like that. Was simple language, right? When they were young children. And then when they're adults, I would still say every night when I said goodnight to my kids, I would say to them, whether you would deem it as positive or negative, I would say, I felt really respected today when I saw you do this, or when whatever. Okay. And sometimes I would say, I felt really hurt. And maybe we'd probably already talked about it. It's not like this was a blind side at the end of the day after something had happened. Like, please do not do that. But I would say I felt really hurt, when XYZ happened today. And I know that we can do different tomorrow, So I was encouraging and lifting them up, but I was honest. I was flat out honest all the time. Now, here's a nuance that you need to understand about this simple tool that you can be modeling for your teenager. I feel X about Y. When you get that I feel, I want you to just pick one feeling. Just pick one if you can, okay? I feel X about Y. Now, when you say the Y part, be very cautious about using the word you, okay? Anything that's followed by you, a you statement, can be very inflammatory. So especially if you would deem it a negative thing, like I feel really frustrated that you, be really careful about that. It can come across as attacking, negative, shaming, judging, all those other, kind of crappy things. Sorry, my screen keeps turning off and I constantly forget to turn that off when I go on live. Literally need to write myself a note. Okay. So when you're saying I feel X, pick a feeling about Y, you want to say the Y part so that it's not inflammatory, blaming, which is toxic. Use I. Like use I in your ownership language. So I feel really respected when I see you, blah. When I hear you, blah. So what you're doing is recounting your own data, the data as you see it, your sensory. I hear, feel, saw, touch, like whatever. You're using ownership language, okay, to recount your why part. I feel X about why, rather than you statements. Now, you're going to have to probably use you in there, right? I feel frustrated when I hear you say, I don't know. I know that you are doing your best and I'm trying really hard to be patient. And right now I just feel frustrated. Like you're allowed to feel whatever you feel. You're allowed to totally be honest about that. Okay. Just be careful about using you unless it is recounting actual data, what you saw, heard, touch, taste, smell, sensory stuff. Okay. So I feel, oh my gosh, my screen keeps turning off. This is so frustrating. Sorry. I feel X about Y. Okay. So that is a tool that, so long as it doesn't matter what it is, it could be about your work. You come home that day and you're like, I feel so annoyed that I heard my boss say this, or I feel so frustrated that this pandemic situation won't end. The more you model, I feel X about Y, the more you are giving permission for your teenager to use feeling language. And because their emotional, their brain is trying to put a frame of reference around this new set of very complex emotions and thoughts, you're helping them build that scaffolding. Like, what does it look like? What does it sound like? How would you know? You could say the word annoyed to them, and annoyed means something different for you than maybe it does for them. Like you can use complex emotion words. You're helping them to kind of color in like, what does that even mean? Because I hate to tell you this, but we're not born having a language for complex emotions or thoughts. Like we're not born that. We need to be taught that. And that's where you come in as a parent. Okay. All right. Oh, awesome. Okay. So, here's a tool that I use, and it's on my Instagram. What do you call that? The highlights. It's on the highlights. It's under self-care. This is a tool I highly recommend that you print out, you put on the fridge, and even bring it to the dinner table. That's right. I said it. Bring it to the dinner table. It's called The Feeling Wheel. If someone can put this in the comments for me, that would be awesome. It's called The Feeling Wheel. It's by Dr. Gloria Wilcox, Wilcox. You can Google it. It's free. You can download it anywhere as a PDF. It's totally free. The Feeling Wheel by Dr. Gloria Wilcox. Can someone write that in the comments for me so that everybody can see that? The Feeling Wheel, okay? I highly recommend that you put this on the fridge and even bring it up at dinner. Thank you so much, Adam. Appreciate that. The Feeling Wheel, you can, like I said, download it. It's a free PDF. Here's the thing. This is studied, okay? She came up with this. The cool part is it's a wheel. It has 3 layers. The inner layer is kind of the simplistic feelings. Not labeled as good and bad. I'm not a fan of all feelings or feelings. So there you go. Thank you so much, Adam. Thank you. Appreciate that. So there is an inner wheel that's the more simplistic feelings. There's a secondary wheel where they get more complex. And then there's an outer wheel where they're even more complex. And they build on each other. So it helps you also when you're using the I feel X about Y. You could actually model going to the feeling wheel and being like, yeah, it's that one. I feel, and then say the word, I feel this. You're modeling putting a frame of reference to these more complex feelings for your teenager so that they can start to develop their own language around it, okay? I recommend not only keeping that on the fridge, but I recommend using it at the dinner table. Yes, I do. Go around the dinner table once during dinner And everybody uses the feeling wheel to say one thing that they felt that day about something. So you're modeling two things, the feeling wheel and I feel X about Y. I feel happy that I got to go to in-person school. I feel joyful. Hey, Teresa. I feel ecstatic. So that's a more complex feeling word. Okay. That I got to see my friends today. Whatever it is, just start modeling that. Okay. So now I'm going to move on to, here is one of the reasons this is another reason that your teenager uses I don't know. And I hear about this from teenagers in my DMs here on Insta and over there on TikTok in the comments daily. Okay. One of the reasons that teenagers default to I don't know is because they feel that if they say what they know how to say and what is true, they will be judged, criticized, and mostly not unheard. They won't feel heard. Now, please hear me. I am not saying you're not a good parent. I'm not saying that. I don't even know if it's true. I don't know. But in a way, it doesn't matter. Because perception is truth. Perception is everything. So if your teen perceives that they're going to be judged, criticized, or unheard, then that's what's true for them. It's not really arguable. Feelings, P.S., are not up for judgment. They're just not. Your feelings aren't up for judgment, and neither is your teenagers. Okay? So when you remember that, this is a little bit easier. So what teenagers tell me is, I say I don't know because the last time I tried to say what I was actually feeling, what was true for me, is I got cut down, criticized, or they cut me off, or they kind of brushed off, like not heard, not listened to. And so now I just don't bother. I just say I don't know. So it's kind of a safety mechanism as well, as much as it can be habitual because they just learned I don't know. And it's just easier to say I don't know sometimes. So I think you really need to be cautious of that. Yes, exactly right. Ask the twins, yes, I don't know. Yeah. So I don't know is real and true. And it's also a protectionist coping mechanism for them if they're feeling like when they actually do answer with something that you would prefer to hear, they don't feel safe doing so. So this is, you're asking them for something that feels vulnerable. I don't care if you don't think it's vulnerable, they feel it's vulnerable, okay? So the other thing is that when I ask teenagers, like, okay, so what do you mean that you don't feel heard? Like, what do you mean I won't tell them because they just won't listen. Like, what does that mean? How do you know they're not listening? So sometimes your teenager is perceiving that you're not listening because let's face it these days, right? As adults, we're more digitally distracted than ever with our phones, and maybe you're making dinner or you've got your dog is freaking out or like whatever, you name it, right? So they're making up a story that you're not listening and you're not feeling heard. So this also, because you're the parent and you can lead this, is about you setting up an agreement with your teenager that says to them, what does it look like for you to feel heard? Like, what do you want me to do to listen to you so that you feel heard? Some teenagers are like presence, right? Their love language is probably quality time. They want like eye contact. They want like you to be like listening, present. For other teenagers, that's like, woo, hell no. Do not be looking at me when I am sharing vulnerable stuff or I'm going to run the other way. Like, don't. So maybe they're like, yeah, listening to me looks like you're cooking, like be chopping and don't be looking at me because it doesn't feel safe for them to have eye-to-eye stuff if they're like sharing super vulnerable stuff. Maybe for some teenagers, it's, well, I'll talk to you when we're driving because you're looking at the road. Do not be staring at me. You'll weird me out. Okay? It's just weird. So this is really critical for you to move past getting I don't know that you start to open a conversation about what being heard and what being listened to means, and that you don't that you don't judge with their answer. And you may not be able to give them exactly what they want, and that's okay. You can say, okay, that might be a bit difficult for me because I do have these other things that are going on at that time. Hi, Marian. That you can also say to them, how about this? You can negotiate, okay? Or you could say, yeah, I can do that with you, but probably only like at this time of day when all these other things are off my plate. Would that work for you? So really understanding what listening looks like and sounds like to them. And when they're answering, you're just zip it. You zip it, okay? You don't jump in. You don't need to apologize. You don't need to make excuses. You don't need to make them right or wrong about it. You ask them and you listen. Okay? And then when they're finished, that's when you can say, okay, first of all, thank you for sharing that with me. I appreciate knowing this about you. The more you validate what they're sharing, because you don't have to agree. Can we just say that? You do not have to agree. The more you validate what they're sharing with you, the more they're opt to share. Okay? So you can negotiate agreements about what it looks like to feel heard. You can, hey, Becca, so good to see you. So that is about creating emotional safety for them. Because most teenagers who say, my parents don't listen to me anyway, so I'm not going to share with them. Like, they just don't listen. And I say to them, well, how do you know they're not listening? It's not always stuff they've checked out, but it's been their experience. So your teenager is not likely, although I always empower teenagers to do this, your teenager's not likely to be the one who initiates this conversation and says, you know, mom or dad, I don't feel heard when you talk to me. Now, if they do, if they give you an I don't know and you go into a very normal response, which is like, I'm so like, can you just tell me something other than I don't know? And they're like, well, last time I tried, you didn't listen. I just need you to stop in your tracks right there. This isn't about you being wrong, okay? This isn't about that you're being a bad parent. They're trying to share something really critical with you. So stop in your tracks and take a deep breath. Because this is the time for you to turn with them and say, okay, I heard what you just said. That's important to me. What does listening look like to you? What can I do to have you feel more heard? Okay. So there's the actual physical presence or activity of listening. And then there's creating the emotional safety so that when they do share something, they don't feel judged, corrected, fixed, or interrupted. Because wow, as parents, it's so easy to do because you have more perspective on life. You go at a faster pace. You know, life is hard right now in a pandemic and it's stressful and everybody's stressed. So you've got a million other things going on and you're like, for real, you really want to sit and talk about this? Yes, sometimes they do. So it's about patience and presence, okay? To create that emotional safety for them to be present. Remember, perception is reality. I also want to ask you, you know, when they say you don't listen to me, before you get defensive, which is a toxic style, before you go getting defensive, I want you to just ask yourself, just do a little check-in. Am I really listening? Like, am I really listening? Because our world is not trained to listen right now. Multitasking is more glorified than ever with digital connectivity. We're constantly doing 2 and 3 things at one time. And your teenager knows that. And it's kind of off-putting. It's not really endearing. And that's just a part of our culture. I've done it all the time. And my kids are like, my teenager would say to me, Mom. And I literally, I would have to put my phone down, turn away from my laptop and listen and be like, even though it was hard for me to hear what my teenager was saying to me, I'd have to be like in my head, I'm like, he wants to tell you something. If you want a relationship with him, you're going to look at him and listen. even if what he's telling you doesn't seem to matter to you right now. Like this is literally what I'm not joking. This is literally what I would say to myself in my head. I got one who's a talker and one who's not. And even though I was doing the modeling of I feel X about Y, and they have quite a developed emotional vocabulary. It was presence in listening. I still struggle with that. And I have to check myself about it all the time. All right. Are you really listening? Okay. How do they know you're listening? Again, this is a conversation I want you to ask. Have you asked, what does listening actually look like for you? How can I help you feel more heard? Because the more you model hearing them, the more likely they are to model feeling heard for you. See, the expectation as parents is that our teenagers are going to lead this. Well, it's misled. You're the parent, and so you're the leader. This is about you modeling and leading this stuff, okay? This is another thing that will generally get you more of I don't know when it comes to the feeling stuff and this is so pervasive for parents, and I put myself in this boat 100%, particularly in a pandemic and with what our teenagers are going through right now with school, okay? The whole pandemic schooling, I've done lots of videos on that, and so I'm not going to get into detail about it. However, I'm going to put my earphone back in. What I will say is this, is that as a Gen X parent, Gen X, for the most part, we were raised in the culture of baby boomers who said, go to school, get good grades, get a degree, or get a good job, voila, your life is perfect, right? Well, guess what? That didn't happen. We spent money on degrees and we can't get jobs in our industry. Anyway, we were programmed with this, hey, Safina, we were programmed with this language that says results. Because Gen X was generally not raised by parents who had the luxury of learning about emotional quotients and emotional intelligence, emotional vocabulary. They're not bad people. Just they didn't come from generations where they had any time or space for that, okay? So now we're trying to raise kids who have emotional intelligence because we understand the importance of it and give them an emotional vocabulary. But when you and I were not raised in that, this stuff can feel really odd. And so we tend to be parenting more about results. We're parenting more about how did your test go today? So we want to know what percentage did you get? What grade did you get? How did you do in that sport? How did you, do you see what I mean? When we start to parent based all on accomplishment and achievement, which is kind of how our parents parented us. So it's normal for us, in our brains. That in itself can lower emotional safety for a teenager, particularly in a pandemic when many, many, many teenagers and young adults are struggling with performance and accomplishment. If that's the focus of our language as a parent, then I can tell you that our teenagers are already feeling conditionally loved, like they're only a percentage in a letter grade. And so the chance of them sharing feelings with you are smaller. So again, I put myself in this boat 100%, and it's really hard. I'm really shifting my language to say differently, to acknowledge effort, acknowledge time management, acknowledge when help was needed, acknowledge those things and not just acknowledge outcomes. The actual test result. Because the more I acknowledge my teenager's character, I really love what I see. I appreciate your effort that you're putting into this. I admire your commitment for this. I admire that kind of thing. I'm lifting them up at their character and not attaching the who they are, their worth or their value in the end result, which sets them up to fail. P.S. Okay, so this is really, really critical, is that when we can acknowledge who they are and their traits through character, they're more likely to have emotional safety to talk to you about feelings than if we're parenting purely from results and attaching that to their self-worth. And even if you're not doing it, that's what they do, because teenagers, they internalize all of this stuff, okay? All right, if you get it I don't like right and wrong, but if you don't feel like you're getting this, or you don't feel like you've gotten it, apologize. Model apology. And an apology is done with great presence. I want to apologize for how I responded to you back there. I had this and this going on in my mind, and I realized that's either an old story or that's from, when I was growing up. That's not a way that I choose to move forward, that I'm choosing to think going forward. And I understand that might not have had an impact that I was trying to create, and I'm apologizing for it. And then you just, you be quiet and you let them share. Yeah, actually, that kind of sucked. Like, when you said that, I was like, screw you. And you just listen. You're like, yep. Okay, so empathy is also, you don't have to agree. Empathy does not require agreement, okay? So we're not going to talk about that, but we're talking about the emotional language. So the biggest thing that I can say in this is that you are modeling as a parent. I feel X about Y. You're using the feeling chart by Dr. Gloria Wilcox. It's a free download. It's on my Instagram highlights under self-care. Put it on the fridge so that you're helping your teenager to start build a reference point for what these feelings are, and a word that goes with that. Now they're going to determine what that looks like on their own, but at least you're giving them a huge starting point. And please remember to be compassionate with your teenager when they're saying, I don't know. There is truth to I don't know, because just the whole, the way that their brain is developing, the physiology of their brain, they might not know. There is also some things that are underlying I don't know, which maybe they haven't felt heard. Maybe they don't feel emotionally safe to share. Maybe they have felt judged, criticized, corrected, okay, whatever those things are. So this is a point to have another conversation with them, is why, I'm curious about I don't know. What can I do to have you feel more heard? What can I do to build an emotionally safe space so that when you do know, not when you feel like sharing, like when you do know, you might want to share that. Okay. So stuff like that. This all moves towards self-advocacy, and self-advocacy is absolutely critical, because when your teenager's out in the world and now they're a young adult, if they have some kind of bullying narcissistic boss, you're going to want them to have very clear and assertive language to use to speak up against things that they know aren't right. So this isn't something that you just can hope they're going to learn later in life. And for all of you parents of daughters, what if they date someone who's controlling and manipulative, and they don't know how to advocate very assertively for themselves? That's a scary thought. Advocacy is built at home. Building an emotional vocabulary to put with the assertiveness of what they want, how they feel. How do these emotions feel in their body? How do they know? How do you know you feel sad? How do you know you feel ragey? How do you know you feel how do you know? Have these conversations about how it feels in their body so they can help to identify. Maybe they get sweaty hands. Sweaty hands is a sign of anxiousness or sweaty, great. There's no wrong answer to this. But when you got to think right now, I want you to project this out, extrapolate out 10 years. Does your teenager, or are you helping your teenager to build the kind of emotional and assertive language that they can use to stand up when things are not working for them? When whatever is happening feels like it's crossing a boundary for them, do they have the words and the language to use to speak up against that? And I'm hoping you're okay with them practicing at home, because I don't know where else they're going to learn it. Okay. So that means they're not talking back. I need parents to please back down for a minute about talking back and speaking up. Yes, speaking up is going to sound like talking back when they're learning it. It's just like crashing into all the coffee tables was a version of walking before they knew what walking was. They're going to use language that's disrespectful. They're going to use stuff that's hurtful. That's how they're learning to create an assertive voice that is called speaking up. And you can say to them, I think what you're going for is something over here. How can I help you form that in a way that would be easier for me to hear, right? Or something like that, so that they are learning the tools to be assertive. We can't want our teenagers to run a kick-ass world for us when they're leading our world if we are not going to equip them with this kind of language to fully and passionately express themselves and be assertive when they need to be. If we're also going to dog them and degrade them or judge them for just using I don't know, when that is also simply a phase of their brain development, the physiology of their brain development. It's not always a choice to be defiant or rude. Sure, like I said, it's a habit. It can be a habit, okay? But there's lots of other things that I've just shared here that can be underlying that. All right, that's what I've got for you today. I want to close with, if you are not in my 5-day challenge, because I'm talking about this in my 5-day challenge. It starts on Monday. The link is in my bio. It's all the questions. It goes to the website. It'll tell you all of that. 5 days to a better relationship with your teen. And communication on 2 different parts of that is like 2 of the nights. That's what we're talking about, is this kind of communication. And I'm giving you exact scripts and tips to help you connect with your teenager in a way that's more meaningful, so you can have the relationship that you want with a lot less baffling blow-ups and painful disconnection. So get to the link in my bio, register. It starts April 5th, 5 days to a better relationship with your teen. It's $9. That's like less than 2 specialty coffees. Huh? Got my big cup of tea here? That's less than that. Okay. So get in on the 5-day challenge. It only runs about every 2 months. So I don't know when the next one, I don't even have a date for the next one yet. I don't know if I'm going to do it before summer. That's what I got for you today. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for watching my videos, for commenting, liking, sharing. I so appreciate it. I will see you next week on Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific. I'm not going to tell you the topic yet, so stay tuned. Do we meet in the Facebook group, or will you send a Zoom link? No, it's all in the private Facebook group that you get access to once you register. That thanks to you for the question. I think that's Franca. Yes. Yeah. Thanks for that question. Absolutely. Thank you, Adam. Thanks, everybody. Have an awesome day and a happy Easter weekend. Happy Easter weekend to you. Bye.